behalf of Father John and myself, Father Rob, we're the pastor and the associate pastor here at Annunciation. And again, I would like to welcome you here. I'm just going to get it out there. Last night I came in and Ruth was working on the list. And not everyone included the last names. But I saw the names rolling up and I didn't know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But we need to do this. And we need to do it together. So let's take a moment as we must to acknowledge our own need for forgiveness and for healing. To ask our Lord for his pardon and for his strength. Many years ago, when I was finishing my training in seminary, I was asked to do a CAPE unit. A CAPE unit is clinical pastoral education. It's a 14-week course that you take in hospitals in training you how to be a chaplain. It took place in St. Joseph's. It's a hospital in London, Ontario, where I went to seminary at St. Peter's. And it was, as you can imagine, very intense. What they try to train you to do is when you meet somebody, when you encounter them, remember, not a family member or a close friend, this is someone you maybe walk into a room and there's their life. And they'll tell you things that are difficult. And there's a natural tendency that we all have to kind of avoid the pain and spare the person. Simple example, if someone had a heart attack and there's still some question, what's going to happen here? What's the damage? And your tendency often is, well, these are great doctors here. They're going to fix you up. You're going to be fine. But what the person needed wasn't your encouragement. What they needed was you to go down through that channel with them. I'm scared. I think I may not survive this. My daughter's supposed to get married next summer. I was going to walk her down the aisle. What if I don't make it out of here? That's hard, isn't it? It's hard to walk through that channel with somebody and not make it about me. But that's what we were trained to do, and we were able to do that, and then it's usually at the back end of it, they'll say it. They'll say to you, well, I think I'm going to be okay, though, and I think I'm going to make that wedding, and thanks for stopping in. I appreciate it. And they kind of dismiss you. Now, that was an easy one, right? Hearts are kind of physical things, and we can kind of get our heads around that. It's often a plumbing thing in surgery. Cancer is more difficult, isn't it? Because that's not in a place that you can just fix. Sometimes it's a chemical thing, and it takes a lot more to do that, and it's a little scarier. More difficult yet is children who are sick. There's a sort of an innocence. It's not their fault. They don't understand, and we want to protect them. It's very innate in us, and so, of course, that's what we want to do. The most difficult of all, of course, is the thing that we don't even want to name. And I do remember working that summer, and the pager went off. Pager, it was the 90s. And I was called into the maternity ward. And I don't remember all the details because it's a while ago and it was pretty shocking, but there was a young couple there. And to me, I remember thinking, I was only 29, but they looked about 15. I know they were in their early 20s, but they seemed so young to me. And they'd come into the hospital thinking that they were going into an early delivery, and they lost their child. And you walk into that room, and I got a clipboard, and I got a little thing that has my name on it. And they look at me and assume, oh, you know what to do. It was like my 4th week. But what I did was I just stood with them. I didn't try to fix it because I couldn't. I didn't even try to explain it because I can't. I just stayed with them. And we talked about some things, and their other family members were driving from, an hour away, and we had some time. And so eventually they moved them out of the living room, and they went up to a room upstairs. And I remember bringing the baby up to them, and we were going to have a little prayer time together before, really the end of that part. And it's something that the hospital does that most of you wouldn't be aware of, and maybe you didn't notice, and this happens in many different ways, so maybe it wasn't part of a hospital, but they'll put a little crocheted butterfly on the door frame. Now, it's something that you wouldn't necessarily notice, and it's not meant for you to notice. It's for other people. Because it's a busy place, it's a public place, and there's shifts coming and going, and we have people in administration and support staff and food coming and going. And so it's a way of warning people as they come near that door that something has happened here. And there's a sensitivity that's needed. Unfortunately, it's often on the maternity ward where this happens. And so the obvious questions maybe aren't so obvious. So just to be careful and be sensitive. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that the hospital does that. But unfortunately, it creates a certain kind of almost training or that we don't talk about these things. They're too hard to talk about. They're too painful. And maybe it's better if we don't say anything. But I don't know if that's true, because if we don't say anything and we don't name it, then we can't grieve it. If we can't grieve it, then we can't heal. And that can stay with us for a very, very long time. That's what we're trying to do today. Sort of became aware in the Archdiocese that this is an area that's hard, it's difficult. There's no good way to do this, but we need to do this. And that same kind of idea of not trying to fix it, not trying to explain it, just moving through it, to acknowledge that it happened. These little ones were part of our lives, and they remain part of our lives. So we grieve them, of course. But as Catholics, we do that at the Eucharist together. And there'll be an opportunity afterwards, a social time when we can again be together. And something we've been working on here in our parish is to make a space for that. There's a little garden that we're working on just here. It's behind the grotto. It's in the front of the church. It's interesting because it was a space that's been there forever, and I didn't really notice it. It was just kind of overgrown and not much there, really. So we cleared it away, and we got rid of all the extra stuff. We put down Riverstone, like you saw when you came in the church. It kind of matches. It's a similar kind of theme. And we made it open. And yes, a little barren. We planted 2 bushes there that are going to grow. Now, they're still young, and they don't look very different right now, but one of them will grow to be about 6 feet high, and it will flower. The other one is the same plant, but it's only going to grow a little bit. It'll never be much bigger than about this, and it's going to flower too. And then we brought some stones in. I want them to be looking kind of organic, and I want it. So Gail and Will are here this morning, and they were very much part of this as well. The stone that we placed there, we wanted something big enough that you could sit on it and maybe spend a little time there. Trust me, it weighs just over 2,000 pounds. We brought in a special machine to move it. It's going to be there a long time. So it's a place and a space. There is some life there. It's a place to gather and to think and to pray and to acknowledge that things happen that we wish had not happened. Last night, we were just finishing off actually lighting it, so even at nighttime, if someone came, it would be safe to go there. And there's a sign, and I noticed on the sign that someone had taken a rock and placed it on top of the sign and 2 little pebbles with it. And that's exactly what I was hoping for. I don't know what that means. I don't know the story behind it. I don't need to. and just assuming someone needed to be there to acknowledge something and to experience healing. And I pray that that happened. I wanted to finish with just one last little witness from my own story. When we were going through the list of names I mentioned last night, I asked Ruth to add one more name. The name was Sean. Baby Sean was my nephew. He was only a month from term. So when this happened, we did have a little funeral for him. We were able to do that. I was 1 year ordained, and so we had a little chapel. But I still remember going to the hospital, and this is in Kingston. I knew that it had happened. I knew the story already, but I walked down the hallway to my sister-in-law in her room, and there's that butterfly. But I remember when we buried baby Sean, I put my hand on the casket and said goodbye, and I said, I'll take you fishing in heaven. That was my job. As a priest, I don't have a family of my own, so as Uncle Rob, I would take the kids out after the meals, and we'd play hide and seek, and then get them in trouble and teach them how to hide from their parents and all kinds of good stuff like that. It's an uncle thing. But Sean will have to wait for a while. That's okay. It's not okay, but it is what it is. And as now, I was amazed. I hadn't thought about that for a long time, but the emotion was still so raw. And I'm an uncle. What would it be like for a mom and a dad, a sibling? Again, we can't fix all of that, and I can't explain it. I just feel it with you. And sometimes maybe that's going to be the best we can do for now. But there is a beautiful prayer that we say at funerals. We finish with it. It's part of the rite of committal, that we will be together again when the love of Christ, which conquers all things, destroys even death itself. It's a faith statement. We begin the funeral with this talking about baptism, and we end it with this notion of we will be together again. And maybe we need to end it there for now. These little ones are not forgotten. We still pray for them. They're still part of us and who we are, and we will be together again. And the love of Christ, which conquers all things, will destroy even death itself. Amen? So we're moving to a prayers of the faithful, but I'll just add one of my own as I finish my homily, just that for all of you and whoever you may be and whatever that story was and however pain you continue to carry, that you would know the tenderness of God, the love of Christ, that Mother Mary would hold your child for you until we are together again. Until then, you're not alone. We're with you as well. God bless you all.